All right, what's up, everybody? We are back on the Solution Stack, and as you can see, we are real life in person, not just audio. James hanging out his office, I'm in mine. We're just to be talking about some good MSP stuff today, right?
Yeah, general good information for any business.
Any business. Okay, so one of the topics that had come up is obviously it's protection, right? So that was a question that we had posed is, how companies across the board that can protect and how they protect their most valuable asset. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. But really, I think we'd have to probably start with what is their most valuable asset?
Yeah, it's a great question, and for the most part, this will vary as like company to company as far as like physical assets, data assets, etc. The primary thing that any company trades on is trust,
Mm-hmm.
right? So if you can't trust an organization to do what they need to do, keep things secure, etc., like there's probably not much incentive to do business with them, right? Whether you're looking at, patients in a healthcare setting, uh, donors in a nonprofit setting, even clients, if it's builders or uh, anyone really who may be paying you to do a thing.
Mm-hmm.
If they don't trust you to do it, obviously that's going to be a problem. Really, one of the big components of whether they trust you or not, or whether you're trustworthy, is how you handle your data, your systems, right? How you handle their information. Because these days, as much as a server costs or a computer or even a building, data actually probably exceeds that value
Mm-hmm.
for most people. A long time ago, they kind of had this philosophy that the new gold rush was in data, and I think we're seeing that play out. So
As
having
is still a thing or not a thing?
No, it is more and more so.
Mm-hmm.
With the prevalence of things like SaaS products and stuff, you don't really own as much of your systems as you used to, but you do own the data, at least in theory, right? So,
In theory.
regardless of where it sits, what it's on, it's really the data that everyone's putting value behind.
Mm-hmm. So then, if that is the value, then obviously that would be the threat. People going after data and zipping it out and, attacking it, corrupting it, whatever that is. So how does a business actually lose trust when that comes into play?
Well, I can tell you how a business loses my trust, and that's when I get a notice in the mail that they were breached and they've activated credit monitoring for me. Like I'm really thinking hard about that relationship and whether I want to continue it or move
Mm,
to other things. I mean, there are scenarios where essentially you're pinned to it; you can't really move away from it.
mm-hmm.
But it does really open the door to exploring alternatives when you can't like secure something as simple as my name and address, right?
Right.
So
So I just had one of those the other day. You said that and it sparked me. I don't know if it's AT&T or something, but yeah, I seem to be getting those more and more. So now all of a sudden it gets breached, and now you got to go to Equifax and Experian and shut yourself down, huh?
yeah, I just keep my stuff on lock anyway all the time. Number one, it prevents the wife from buying stuff that we don't need, and number two, it's just a good practice.
Who do you use?
So I go directly with the credit folks, right? So like TransUnion, Experian.
Oh, you don't use like a LifeLock or some like third party or
No, I
something like
don't. I
that?
mean, you know, sure, they provide a service. Mostly that's due to, you know, people not knowing how to do it themselves
Mm-hmm.
and just kind of wanting to farm that out. And those types of services generally do have other benefits to them, but I'm kind of a hands-on guy when it comes to those things, so I do all that stuff directly. Yeah,
Nice.
it's not difficult. It's just takes a little bit of effort to go figure it out and make sure that you're covering all your bases where at least some of those may have like insurance policies that back it if it gets breached or whatever. I
Yep.
mean, the guy from LifeLock famously many years ago said, you know, I dare you to hack my social, and like put it up on a billboard, and pretty sure he had to eat some crow on that.
I think I remember that story.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's funny. So you work on a wide range of industries, with nonprofit, construction, all the different sectors and verticals. Um, does this problem of data breach and the whole trust thing, does that happen? Is it different across sectors? Do you see it within, maybe one that's a little bit more prevalent?
Um, yeah, I
Or
mean,
is it across the board?
certainly, healthcare and finance are typically like the two biggest targets.
Yep.
And then kind of individuals, but everyone's a target. Long gone are the days where, um, being a small organization kind of insulated you a little bit from the threat. That's very like 2005 thinking. Nowadays, it's we're just gonna shotgun out as much as we possibly can and kind of harvest whatever and try to leverage that for whatever we can get for it. Just keep in mind, like the cost to do it versus the ROI, even for a small organization, is incredibly high. Like that return, oftentimes, if you think about like who's actually doing this, and make no mistake, they're professionals, right? But they're usually in, we'll say, second or third world countries, and probably not getting paid a good wage, if any wage at all. So if, for example, you are in an area where the average income is, $1,000 a month, and you come up on a $5,000 score with a week or two of effort, well, you've done pretty well, right? And
Hmm.
the barrier to entry is quite low as far as the equipment to do it. You essentially need a computer and internet connection, and a couple of tools that you either develop or you buy through some of these channels. But again, I think in this country, the two most regulated are going to be healthcare and finance for sure. Like DoD stuff with cyber maturity, CMMC coming through is starting to catch up there, thankfully. But you know, anything where there's federal regulation, obviously, is a bigger target. The reason that federal regulation is there is because of the value of that data.
Hmm.
With HIPAA in particular, like you literally could be kind of playing with someone's life with some of that information, right?
Seriously.
And stuff that can be held against them.
So what?
They're
Oh, go ahead.
vulnerable.
Yeah.
Um, but across all industries, every business has value, right? And most of that value is related to the data you have or what you do with it. And
Hmm.
people can get a hold of that and kind of extract that value from it if you don't protect it.
Now, obviously being in these different sectors, is there something that kind of stands out to you that they'll be able to do it well, whatever it is? Obviously, it's a protection. Let's say construction. In order to do it well, is it a budget thing? Like, do they have to have more money, or are they just smarter, more manpower? Like, as many people as you see, there's got to be some kind of a pattern um, that you can see.
Yeah, it's not just budget. In fact, it's very little to do with budget, or it's not as much about budget as people think. Right? People think cybersecurity is incredibly expensive, but it's a mindset. It's certainly um, knowing, hey, this needs protection, and then taking efforts to do that. They kind of treat it like some sort of insurance policy, right? Oh, I have antivirus, so I'm safe. Well, that's not
Yeah.
really true. Putting a firewall in place, but not understanding how to configure it, those kind of things, right? So you can have every tool in the toolbox, but if you don't know what a wrench does or how a saw works, then those tools are effectively useless,
Hmm.
even though you can produce that tool and say, look, I got tools, right? So, essentially, it's a top down thing, right? So, first off, you have to have the people in power say, this is a priority for us, and then provide whatever reasonable resources. Because, look, even with these tools, like you can get carried away and, essentially throw money down the drain, and it can add up pretty quickly. But, having the tools and being safe are two very different things. And the process and procedure that goes into how you operate is actually far more important as a fundamental component. You still need tools, they
Hmm.
still need to be configured and managed well. But if you don't know what you're trying to accomplish, all of that is at least potentially throwing money into a pit.
Yeah. Well, and as long as I've been doing this with you, I've learned so much more that, like, yes, the tools, but man, the human element has just been a resounding message of how you do that. Man, so much so is hanging out with a buddy. Gosh, when was it? I don't know, last weekend, and certain public utility company that they're taking it so seriously that they're offering incentives to catch, and if you don't catch, they're specifically doing phishing, right? Is that you could get released. I mean, they're taking it that serious.
Yeah, and you have to. Well, let me rephrase. You should. I mean,
Yeah.
people do what they're going to do, and whether they know it or not, they're accepting risk with their inaction as much as they're trying to mitigate risk with taking
Action.
action. So,
Right.
understanding what your organization needs, what they don't need, most importantly, right? How that aligns with business operations and ensures that you can do the things you need to do in the manner you need to while doing it securely. There's some nuance to it, right? And
Hmm.
for organization like a public utility in particular, like they're big targets. There's
Huge.
sustained campaigns, especially against things like water districts and power, and some of these, that because the impact of disruption goes beyond the cost of a breach, right? You're essentially creating chaos, or at least potentially, or um, a number of different things that could affect the society at large, right? At least
Hmm.
on a regional basis. So sometimes it's not about extracting money through the data they're stealing. Sometimes it's about creating so much pain you have no choice but to pay, right? So,
Pain is
you know, th-
another way of using the T word. Yes.
yeah,
Pain.
yeah.
Well, and that kind of goes into the whole insurance part of it. I know that you guys have been talking about security insurance, or cyber insurance, I guess you would say, is that it's such a big thing, and I think it's a need that you have to have. Yeah, and you've seen it becoming a bigger issue.
Yeah, certainly. There's kind of two takes on it. The first one is, um, it's the right thing to do.
Hmm.
The second is, like, this is actually has like bottom line impact, right? So, to be clear, no one is impervious to these types of problems. In fact, the bigger you are, the more likely you're going to have some of this stuff happen to you. But if you're small, it's devastating. If you're big, it's kind of bumpy, and it certainly will cause you pain, but it's rarely an extinction event. For a small business, it can very well be an extinction event. And it isn't just having insurance, right? Which is kind of table stakes these days.
Hmm.
But again, that doesn't secure you, right? So when you fill out those questionnaires through insurance and you check the box saying we do this thing, and say something happens and they find out you're not, well, that's going to affect your payout, right?
Hmm.
Insurance companies want predictability, and they gain that predictability through your actions, right? They know that people who do X, Y, and Z are less likely. So when something does happen and you're not doing X, Y, and Z, particularly if you said you are, well, that payout's going to be minimal or non existent. If you've done the thing, then generally they're going to be a little more robust in how they respond to you.
Hmm.
But
The insurance agencies.
carriers, right? They're the
Okay.
ones
Okay.
who
Yeah.
are doing the payouts. But you know, they're either going to make you pay at the pump
Hmm.
through an increase in premiums, because again, you're a higher risk, or they're going to kind of reduce the payouts, right? And like, go look at your cyber liability insurance policy, right? It's kind of like any other, like a home policy.
I
Uh,
need to.
you have sudden burst versus leak for water damage. Fire, earthquake out here in California is very prominent, right? These are all carve outs in those policies to say these things are not included. And with cyber, same kind of thing, right? Like, and then if you think about like the disruption to your organization, say you get breached and somebody crypto locks all your stuff, right? So now you're negotiating to try to get the decryption key. Well, that's not the only cost involved, right? Your people are down. You're probably going to have to replace some
Production.
equipment. You're
Yep.
losing revenue or your ability to kind of uh, execute the value of your organization. So, there's a lot of different things, and each one of those could be a specific carve out in your cyber insurance policy.
Mm-hmm. Oh, so many angles. I have a hard time with my.
Yeah, deductibles,
Oh,
exclusions. I mean, even
oh my
things like
gosh.
reputation damage. I mean, it's having cyber liability insurance and making sure it's the appropriate coverage for you. Again, two different things, much like having tools and being safe. Having the first part doesn't make the second part true.
Who in an organization is responsible for this? I know we've talked about it before, but when I hear this, I a natural, entity is that strikes out in my mind. But
Yeah.
what do you
Whatever your
say?
leadership structure looks like, that could be a board of directors, that could be a CEO or president or, solo operator, right? Whoever's kind of at the top of the pyramid,
Mm-hmm.
that's who's responsible, ultimately accountable, really, right? Like there's two different aspects. Responsible is kind of below accountable. Accountable is where the buck stops, and with cybersecurity, that literally could be dollars that you're making decisions on, and kind of putting the organization in a protected or a non-protected state, right? CEO, a CFO, those kind of folks, they don't care how a firewall works. They don't care how antivirus works,
Just
right?
want it to
What they
work.
care about is if it takes them down for a few days,
Yep.
what is the impact there? And
Right.
so making sure that they have people who do understand how a firewall works, who do understand how antivirus works, who do understand how to get those systems back online if something were to happen, right? What can we do with the data to protect it? Like those are the questions that they should be asking. They don't really care about the details.
Well, and you guys have the virtual side of it. So now, do you bolt on with that? And you go, hey, CFO, CTO, CEO, we got it. We're your bolt on solution. We'll make sure that this is all good to go, and your cyber liability will be all dialed in.
Yeah, and that's part of being a managed service provider. But another thing, like in the same realm with insurance, is not all managed service providers do the same thing, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
um, we more often than I care to admit get questions about, hey, why is this not covered, et cetera. And it's like, okay, well, there's different options and packages and services that we provide, and each of them has a cost associated with it. And if we go through a proposal process and they didn't say to us, hey, we want a certain level of cybersecurity engagement, then it will be offered. If it's declined, well, again, that's you're kind of on the hook for any outcome there that transpires.
Jeez, so much to think about.
Yeah, I mean, security in general has always been framed as an IT discussion. It's not. It's a business process. It is a leadership discussion, and having the people to
Methodology.
go do it, that's a separate part of that. But again, any of these types of things have to start with the top, and then everything below that kind of follows that lead.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, as much as we've been talking, it's almost like if you're going to set up security on your building, the exterior, you would do it a certain way. You'd have people responsible. They're out there armed or not armed or whatever. So taking that same methodology internally. So what are some? So give me some actions of like next step. Let's say someone's like, "Damn, James is right," like you always are. What steps would they take?
Well, I mean, the first question they really need to kind of settle on internally is, what's valuable to us? Like, what creates the value that we provide to our clients? And, that kind of leads down a path of if something happens, right? Could be a breach, could be a failure, could be a number of different scenarios that would impede the ability to execute on that value, what does that look like for us, right? So if you're in, say, a call center and your phone systems go down, what does that mean for our business, right? And so if you're always looking at it from how does this impact our business, our ability to operate, and then follow the breadcrumbs from there, that's usually the best outcome, right? So, if the answers scare you, do something about it, right? And
Mm-hmm.
if you're comfortable with the uh, potential being there, but not really wanting to take steps to reduce that potential, okay, well, you made a choice and you've probably gotten further than most. Most people look at a price tag and go, meh, I'm not going to do that, but they can't really articulate why in any other
Mm-hmm.
meaningful way.
You know how when you get a new car and you can't drive off the lot, or you buy a house and you actually can't close the loan or however unless you got insurance?
Yeah.
They should almost do the same thing on a business. Like, unless you have an MSP in place and insurance, you can't open it.
There are some who would advocate for a license to operate a computer, period. But
Next show,
some,
next show.
yeah, right. But similar type of concept, right? The that opens up a whole host of other conversations, right? About
Yeah, that would never happen.
especially like government interference, things like that. I mean, I think, at least when vehicle insurance was mandated, there was a pretty significant backlash towards big government trying to tell you what to do. And the
Mm-hmm.
reality is that, yeah, you could do something accidentally, or just have a bad day and literally kill people. And it's getting to that point with cybersecurity. It's, I wouldn't say quite there yet, but um, you know, at the end of the day, you could certainly ruin someone's life if they're storing information with you that leaves your control.
Yeah,
Particularly
you can trace it
financially,
back.
but there are other ways that could happen as well.
That's crazy. Well, there you go. We covered a lot. Anything else you want to add as we wrap up?
Just to reemphasize, this is a kind of a top-down conversation, and these are conversations you should be having with your IT provider, any type of business that you're engaging with, um, to provide services to, are going to kind of want to see that you're doing some due diligence and what they call due care. Um, at least if something goes sideways, they're going to be really interested in what you're doing. There's an assumption that people are doing stuff, but asking yourself those questions of what does it look like if X part of my organization is not operable, and then what are we going to do to either say, okay, that's reasonable for us to be without this piece of our operation, and if not, how do we prevent that from happening? So, um, you know, it's expensive to not be able to produce. Um, Likely more expensive than putting some measures in place to ensure that production can continue.
All right, James. Hey, thanks for hanging out, everybody. Thanks for checking us out on the Solution Stack. We'll be back with another episode soon.
Thanks.
See you guys.